JJ Jinx!
Truck stop!
It's time to talk about the knives that I got last month. And there were quite a few of them. Well, I feel like this was one of the months where I absolutely loved the spread. And I feel like I probably could have made this video about 2 weeks in, for good and bad reasons. Let's talk about it. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the Doug Ritter knife. I didn't really piece it together at the time, but somebody left a comment and said, oh, by the way, that's the guy who designed the Griptilian for Benchmade. And I'm like, that's right, that's how that name is familiar. So this is a cash grab. Let's be honest. Mr. Ritter, if you put your name on this, it'll sell. I mean, who could blame them? It's just a cheap stamped out knife in a survival tin. There's nothing special about this. There's nothing good about the design objectively. I'm not saying I hate it, and I'm saying I understand it. I know why this knife exists, which is more than what I could say for many of my weird knives if you check out that series. So I didn't really carry it, didn't really use it, I didn't really care for it. I'm not really sure where to begin. I guess I'll start with this one. This is that Canoe knife from Rough Rider. I got probably the least amount of pocket time with this one for a couple of reasons. I think I figured it out pretty much right away why I didn't like it. Let's talk about the configuration, first of all. It is a pretty old... Oof, clip my nails. It's a pretty old design. They make them in a few different sizes. I've seen the mini canoes, and a lot of people make them as well. Case makes them, Frost Cutlery makes them, their Hen and Rooster line, I think. Anyway, so it's popular, it's well known. It can come with 2 or 3 blades, maybe more. I don't think I've seen them with just one, though, which is a real shame because that's kind of what turned me off to this knife. First, let me just begin with what I liked. I'm a little scrambled. I've been on the road for a long time. The shape I like a lot. It sort of has that cold steel Spartan-ish thing going on where it flares out on the top and the bottom, and it fits my hand pretty well. It could be a little bit larger, actually. The blade is pretty standard. It's a drop point blade, pretty thin blade stock. One of the things that Rough Rider does with some of their knives is they give it this really thin swedge. And that's okay, but they put it on the pen blade as well. And this is where I have problems. First of all, the pen blade looks a little bit goofy, the way it's sort of all the way up here, but the bottom of the blade is like, you know, you got this kind of turkey neck thing sticking down. It doesn't really affect the use or anything like that. It just looks a little different. I don't know why we put pen blades on knives anymore. I never use them. I guess you can open boxes with them and you can do anything with it that you could do with any other blade, really. But we don't use quills anymore. Why do we put these on knives? Anyway, I just never used it. And in fact, when I went to hold this knife, that narrow swedge I was talking about kind of cuts into my fingers. This is not comfortable to hold because of that narrow swedge. I would have liked this knife a lot better if this pen blade wasn't even there. Then it would be great. And I know kind of how that would feel like if I hold it with both blades open. That feels so much better. But I don't want to do that. You know, not really worth the risk. So those are my thoughts on basically the Canoe configuration, not necessarily this one by Rough Rider, but, you know, it's got that Rough Rider quality. And there it is. I didn't actually care too much for the scales in the end. It's a bit gaudy. It kind of reminds me of like 1970s Las Vegas with the gold and the sparkly metallic elements. I like what they're doing. I just wish it was different colors. I would go with maybe like blue and silver, or purple and gold. I don't know, just this black with gold and copper look. I didn't care for it in the end, but like I said, I like what they're doing with this. I'd like to see more variation if they could. I have no idea how they make this, by the way. It's pretty sweet. Anyway, back into the box you go. Now I gotta talk about this case Rustlock. I do like the Rustlock blade. It is, I guess, in my opinion, it's kind of like a folding sharp finger, and I like the sharp finger configuration, or the blade type. It's a very exaggerated clip point, almost a trailing point in a way. So having one of these in your pocket is pretty sweet, and you can't really get that anywhere else. Case, as far as I know, is the only one that makes a blade shape quite like this that's foldable. If you know of any others, let me know. This Rustlock, though, okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. Case did not make this very well. I think it came at a $70-something price point. That's pretty standard for the Rustlock. But I guess the best way I could show you my issues with it is to show you a Rustlock that was made properly. This is my old Rustlock in Blue Bone that I bought. I don't remember when. I think when did I buy this? It was a long time ago. I want to say I bought this about 8 years ago, and it was from an outlet store somewhere east of St. Louis. And I was like, man, everyone was right. Case knives are awesome. Look at this quality. Well, let's look. These are the no gaps that I always talk about, and the high polish, even on the springs. Now, it's dinged up and it's scratched up because it's got a lot of pocket time and it's old, but look at the fit and finish. Look at that shiny bolster. Now, compare it with the micarta Rustlock from last month, and I see right away there be gaps. It's not as polished. Look at the bolsters, okay? Hopefully this comes through. This looks more like a brushed look. This is a polished look. Yeah, same thing here. This is a brushed look. This is a nice polished look. Let's look at the blades. Actually, let's look at the lockup. Here's the lockup on last month's Rustlock. Ready? Here's your liner. Let's see how it... And that's where the lock lands after opening. Compared to my Blue Bone Rustlock from long ago, it even sounds different from what I remember. Check this out. Well, by sound, I meant feel. I can actually feel that spring. It's kind of like a doing as it moved over, and it's right in the middle of the blade, as opposed to the G10 version on the top. You can see it just didn't go as far. And there's nothing stopping it from going further, because if you look, see how I can just push it over. It's just not sprung correctly, in my opinion. It needs to go a little bit more for me to be confident. Right about there. Let's look at the polish of the blades. Now, these are both heavily used blades. The Blue Bone one on the right is a better polish. It just is. No tool marks. I could actually see some tool marks in the G10 version. Look at that. With the Blue Bone oldie, that's all been polished out. So, you can understand my disappointment. Objectively speaking, there's nothing wrong with this knife. I used it quite a lot. I liked carrying it. It was fun to carry a Rustlock again, and then you can, practice opening it one-handed like that. I just didn't have a fun time with everything else, like looking at it and knowing that it's inferior, man. And it doesn't help that I had a terrible experience with this old Sodbuster, too. Old Sodbuster. It's from a few months ago. If you recall, this is the one that had a huge gap and tons of blade play. Case, what's going on? Are you going the way of Frost Cutlery on me? I keep talking about you guys like it's the golden standard, but that's based on the old stuff that I have. Maybe, I don't know. Could if somebody tell me who has like their newer stuff? Is this common? Do they not make them like this anymore? Or was this just a deal that they cut with Smoky Mountain Knife Works? Like, yeah, we'll stamp out a couple thousand of these for your boxes, and you can ship them. I don't know. If that's the case, yeah, bad joke. I would like to know, because then I might have a talking to with Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Like, hey, that ain't cool. Then we get to the Buck Doctor's knife. I friggin' loved this thing. First of all, the bolsters are more highly polished than the case knife, so there's that. The single blade is very easy to open. No thumb nick required, really, because it does stick out enough that you can just grab it. The half stop is great because it is a long and slender blade, and it just kind of helps when you have a place to stop so you can get it into your hand before opening it fully. It's just a great experience overall, and it is that synthetic stuff for the scales, and I'm okay with that because look, they did a really great job. That looks awesome for it being synthetic. It fooled me. I had to read that to know it. This was a very good cutting knife, a very good slicing knife. I used it at work quite a lot. It doesn't quite disappear into the pocket. It kind of wants to lay longwise, and then it kind of makes an awkward flare out in your pocket. I tried keeping it upright, and it just wouldn't stay upright in my pocket. It just wanted to do that. That's okay. This is just one of the sacrifices you have to make to carry a doctor's knife. It could be solved, though. They do make leather or nylon sheaths for slip joint knives, where you just kind of slip it into a little pouch and then the whole pouch goes into your pocket. I didn't really want to go there. I do love the doctor's knife. It's one of my favorite classic folding styles. I do prefer the ones that have the spatula as well, even though I probably never use it. But just on its own, this is a handsome, fun little knife to carry and cut with. I have one issue with it, and it's not a huge thing, but you see this artificial horn patterning that I first brought up. When they went to put in the shield with the Buck logo on it, it just happened to land in a very raised spot. You see right behind the Buck logo, you have this abrupt cliff from the jigging. That makes a hot spot. Whenever I rub it like this, it scrapes against my finger. And I know what you might be saying, well, just don't do that, JJ Jinx. I can't help it, okay? I'm going to get a little callus on my thumb because it's like, oh yeah, there it is. It's so annoying, but I just can't stop. It's like an itch, you know? I suppose if I really, really cared, I could file it down a little bit. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, actually I'm not sure at all, that every knife is different. I mean, it's gotta be, right? So maybe it just happened to be this one like that. But if not for that, this would be my favorite pick of the month. Elephant in the room time. The Benchmade Bugout with whatever these scales were made of. I've already forgotten. G10, I think, or RFN, one of those two. Now, there's a lot I have to say about this knife. This knife I carried the most from last month, and not just because it was the most expensive one in the box. It was because I was reluctant at first. I put it into my pocket, and I'm like, here we go, I'm doing the Benchmade Bugout thing again. I've been here before. But something happened as time went on. I actually started to really like this knife and appreciate some of the things that I don't think I really learned about the Benchmade Bugout before because I didn't give it a chance. I didn't give it a chance because of those flimsy scales, the blue ones, you know. It was enough for me to put the knife down and walk away. These scales are not flimsy, and it was enough for me to keep carrying it and figure out how to, first of all, properly open it. There's a sort of timing, a cadence to it. If you know, you know. If you don't know, hear me out. You can open it with the thumb studs, and it opens very well like that. You can close it by pulling back the access lock and just swishing the blade down. That works. But let's be honest, the fun part is the flicking, right? So what I learned is you can pull it back on the access lock, flick it out, and that's way more fun. And then you can return it just as well. Now that 1-2 movement actually took a lot of practice for me to get down. I have a lot of knives with access locks, and I just never took the time to learn it like that. What helped was adding lubricant to the springs. 1 drop here, 1 drop in there, kind of work it a little bit, because to be honest, it started to give kind of a grinding sensation after a while, and I was afraid I would actually grind the springs and have them break, because I know they're prone to do that. I've seen people all the time, oh, my Omega springs broke, and I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. Maybe if I lube it up a little bit. Now they have aftermarket Omega springs you can get that are supposedly much better, but after adding some oil in there and kind of letting it spread around, the action was just so much snappier, so much better. You can even do a double like that. You like that? So I fidgeted the hell out of this knife. It's just fun to bam, bam. But you got to get the timing right. You have to pull back on the lock, wait until it gets to about here, and then you let go, and it locks. Same thing on the return. You got to let go at the right time for it to close. Otherwise, you can see, now I can't do it. My muscle memory has been established. I'm trying to I just did it. See how it didn't close all the way? Same thing can happen on the open. Oh, jeez. Well, I'm too good at it now. But anyway, this is nothing new. People who own and love the Bugout, of which there are many, know exactly what I'm talking about. This and other models with access locks. Couple of things I need to say about this knife that I forgot to mention before. I'm a terrible knife enthusiast and I never talked about the blade steel. This is CMMM4. And for those of you who know what that is, it's one of the best steels out there in terms of edge retention. Somehow they've balanced edge retention with toughness, because it also won't shatter on you. It does have enough, flex to it that you won't drop it on the ground and there goes your knife steel, because that happens with a lot of other knife steels. You never have to sharpen it, but you risk breaking it. They figured out how to, have the best of both worlds. But as you know, in the steel world, there's 3 worlds. There's edge retention, toughness, and corrosion resistance. CMMM4 steel is one of the worst when it comes to corrosion resistance. It will rust out on you. That's why it has this coating on it, I think. Ooh, what is this anyway? Whatever. Because if not for this coating or constantly keeping oil on it, it'll eventually corrode, and that might be a disadvantage to people who live in certain climates or use their knives in certain environments. I think it's a perfect steel for me, because, well, the kind of cutting that I do, I'll never need to sharpen this thing. And I don't live in a high salt air type of environment or take this out on a boat or anything like that. So I don't think this knife blade will ever need any maintenance. And that's why it's perfect for me. It might not be perfect for everyone. And there are people who don't like CMMM4 steel anyway, because when you do need to sharpen it, good luck. You're going to be going at it for days until you get a nice removal of the layers you need to get that edge back. It is a real rough steel to sharpen. But it is a Benchmade knife, and it does have that forever sharp warranty, right? So you just send it to them, they'll sharpen it for you, and send it back. Now, as far as these new scales are concerned, they didn't really add or detract anything except, well, they didn't have this squishiness. Otherwise, they're rather ordinary. Which leads me to my final thought on this Benchmade Bugout. Is it a $200 knife? I don't think so. Even if we were to drop the price down to the original design, the blue scaled one, is it a $130 knife? You know what? I don't think so. Even with the CMMM4 Steel, I actually went online. There's a steel factory not far from me, and you can price out a billet of CMMM4 steel that's big enough and wide enough to make 2 of these blades, and it'll cost you about $30 shipped. Now, you're not paying for just the steel when you get a knife. You also have to do the heat treatment, and that's something that also makes CMMM4 steel kind of pricey and, you know, if you forge yourself, difficult, because the heat treating program can be finicky. Leave it too long at certain temperatures, or you don't get it to a certain temperature quick enough, you can screw up the steel. Benchmade, they had to have done a good job, or else people would complain and they wouldn't sell these. That being said, I don't think this knife warrants a $200 price tag. I would pay $75 for this knife. That's where I think the price point should be, which means this is a $125 butterfly. I had a really good time carrying and using the Benchmade Bugout. I would pick this as my favorite, but I said all the same things about the Buck Doctor's knife. Great time, man. I'm not going to pick this one just because, well, you know why. So it's a tough decision. Both of these are great knives for different reasons. Well, I think what'll help is if I impose pocket time as a criterion in my selection. It's going to the Benchmade Bugout, which is something I thought I would never say, which just goes to show there's always more to learn in the knife world. And there's the thumbnail.